National Committee and the Communications Director. Sean, thank you for being with us. I just want to get your reaction to the news today.
I think these findings by the FBI are a clear indictment on Hillary Clinton's judgment and fitness to be president. The office that she's seeking requires the highest level of judgment, making sure that our nation's secrets are protected, but also creating a culture in which people understand the importance of that. What the FBI director laid out today was clearly somebody who doesn't understand the importance of our national security, who puts themselves ahead of the rules for everyone else. I think this is a major, major problem when it comes to the judgment that she would exhibit as president of the United States, and there's no question what this was is a true indictment on her judgment and her fitness to be president.
An indictment on her judgment and fitness, however, not an indictment. I mean, you heard from James Comey saying that no reasonable prosecutor, no reasonable prosecutor would bring this case. You accept that, though, right? You trust that they conducted this in an apolitical fashion. You trust that this investigation was conducted honestly.
Well, I think if you look at the first 14 minutes of what the FBI director laid out, as Wolf and others have said before, you had thousands of emails that were not turned over. She signed a document under the threat of perjury that said that she had turned over every email. That was not true. She sent hundreds of emails that were at the highest level of classification. So whether or not they formally prosecute her or not is one thing. But the director also made it very clear that people are penalized for this and that this is not acceptable. I think another important factor is the culture at the State Department that she oversaw the director made it very clear that was one that did not understand the importance of,
right, but Sean,
protecting classified
do you trust that the FBI
this is someone who wants to be president, Kate.
Thank you. I know. But do you trust that the FBI conducted a fair investigation? Do you trust that?
Well, it sounds like it. Again, their job is not. It sounds like the findings that they made are very clear that she did exhibit poor judgment, that it was reckless by their account, and it is not their job to decide whether or not it formally is prosecuted, which he made clear. I think that any reasonable person who hears these charges, however, can't conclude anything otherwise that this is a clear violation of the law and that it should be, whether or not they past history, somebody who created this sense of culture out of their own desire to protect themselves, out of their own desire not to follow the rules because they wanted to make sure that they had a set of rules for themselves. I think the bigger issue is she fit to be president of the United States? And that question is clearly, the answer is no.
Sean, your candidate, Donald Trump, the presumed Republican nominee, just tweeted. He said the system is rigged. General Petraeus got in trouble for far less. Very, very unfair. As usual, bad judgment. Just to be clear, the FBI Director James Comey, he said there is no evidence here that Hillary Clinton or others intended to violate the law. Those were the words of the FBI Director. He said in other times, in other cases, including presumably David Petraeus, he said when there is prosecution brought in these cases, they either found evidence of a willful intention to violate the law or the sheer amount of material that was transmitted was of such a huge amount that they had to bring charges. He said in this case, neither were evident.
Well, look, I'm not a lawyer, but the entire reason she set up this secret servers, which we are now learning was multiple, is because she wanted to avoid detection, wanted a system for herself. If she had followed the law like everybody else and used a State Department account or used even a private system like the director pointed out, like Gmail, then this wouldn't be a problem. She chose to set up a system for herself around the rules that were established for everybody else for a reason, and that reason is because she didn't want people to know what she was doing. Just this weekend, we found out that Huma Abedin testified that she burned daily schedules. Secretary Clinton went into this position and set up this server, clearly intending to avoid detection, clearly trying not to be transparent, and clearly trying to set up a set of rules for her that no one else would have to, that were different than what everyone else has to follow. Any other employee that works at the State Department that did what she did would have their security clearance pulled and would be facing charges. This is absolutely ridiculous.
So one thing that I just want to clear up, because Donald Trump in his tweet called this very, very unfair. Do you think the investigation was fair, or do you agree with your candidate who thinks it was very, very unfair?
Well, I think the investigation and the facts laid out by the director sound very thorough. They went through everything, and the evidence that he laid out sounds to me like unequivocally a clear violation. I think there's two issues here. One, the investigation, and two, the conclusion. I think the investigation sounds very thorough.
You have to accept them together, though.
The things that
you have an investigation, and you have to. Don't you also have to accept the recommendation of the fair investigation that he says that we are recommending?
No, because I also think that he. No, because as the FBI director made clear, that's not their job. Their job is to do the investigation, hand that over to the prosecutors at the Department of Justice. But I think that the point that Mr. Trump is making is that you have someone like General Petraeus who violates it, and he gets a fine, he faces penalties. I think that we've yet to see what the Department of Justice does, but we already know that Hillary Clinton, the former president, met with Loretta Lynch, and so you're turning all this evidence over to our Department of Justice that you've got to question what's really going on here. They had a private meeting last week, and so what happened in that meeting, what really was said between President Clinton and Attorney General Lynch. But the system clearly looks like it was already, that when the FBI turned it over, the Department of Justice has already seemed to make it very clear what they're going to do with this.
And Sean Spicer, thanks so much.
The idea that people don't face penalties is ridiculous.
Sean